Bungie wants PvP feedback, and against my better judgment, I'm gonna go ahead and weigh in. Please, for the love of God, one thing to mention before we get going. I do not speak for anyone other than me. I'm not gonna shout at the top of my lungs and say something like, "This is what the community wants. I'm the voice of the average player. Gamers rise up." None of that. I only want to speak for me, just as I'm sure that you only want to speak for you. If you disagree with literally any of my feedback at all, that's fine. By all means, share your own constructive feedback with Bungie on whatever platform you use. I'm going to be jumping around a lot in today's video, probably, so I'll try to get some timestamps for you, and you can just skip to whatever part in the timeline you want to hear me run my mouth about the most. But real quick, let me give a shout out to Gamer Advantage. They're the sponsor of today's video. Gamer Advantage glasses are more than just gamer glasses. Not only do they keep me from getting headaches and eye strain after long days of staring at my freaking screen all day, but they're also the only glasses clinically proven to help you sleep better and increase natural melatonin production in your body. Those of y'all out there who check me out on Twitch may not have even noticed, but I've been wearing these for a while now, since before GuardianCon actually, and I find them really comfy. If you stare at screens a lot during the day, whether that be for work, school, or whatever, GA Glasses has got your back. They'll help you game or be able to tolerate screens, at least in general, during the day, and then help you at night by blocking out pestering blue light that tells your brain to stay active, even though you might be about to hit the hay. On top of that, they've got fashionable lightweight lenses, and they don't have that yellow tint, which a lot of people straight up find annoying. Don't wait, get 10% off your order for Gamer Advantage glasses with code Fallout or by using my link in the video description. Thank you, Gamer Advantage. All right, we back. First up, let's start with something easy, maps. Community wants more of them, and after a lot of feedback, which pretty much came to a head with the reaction to the D2 state of the game back in August, Bungie has come out and said, "Aight, we'll give you more." Joe Blackburn, old Joey B, has promised an upcoming map pack, which I'm actually really thrilled about. My feedback about the upcoming map pack: please, no more ultra huge maps. We went for a long time without a new PvP map, and when we got one, we got Disjunction. The community's feelings on Disjunction kind of reminded me of the feedback to the M. Night Shyamalan Last Airbender movie. We waited all that time and got this? Like, for real? Look, I know I'm out of shape, but my Warlock doesn't want to run a 5k every time I spawn just to find at least one single red ping on the radar. Unfortunately, Bungie was probably neck deep in making the next PvP map, Multiplex, when they heard all the community feedback of hating Disjunction. And at that point, they're not going to go out on Twitter and announce to the world, "Oh, yeah, sorry, the next map is kind of big too. Are you sure you guys don't like Disjunction?" I get it, maps take a while to make, couldn't pump the brakes on Multiplex probably at that point, and we got what we got. But I'm gonna be clear, thank you for the big maps. We are now officially good on big maps. Let's get some smaller stuff in the works now for that new upcoming map pack. Maybe take a few polls on what the PvP maps are people enjoy fighting on the most, and keep that in mind when designing the new stuff. And on the subject of asking PvP folk what current maps they enjoy the most, why don't we talk about a map voting system? Full disclaimer, by the way, I have never worked in a PvP game development capacity, obviously, so I openly admit I have no idea how easy this would be to implement into the game. Probably a whole lot more complicated than most people would think, I'm sure, but I at least would like to go on the record and say that it's something I would love and would probably win Bungie a lot of brownie points. Young, Dorito dust-fingered, pizza-faced, bright-eyed, and wrongfully hopeful about one day being able to buy a house Fallout loved this feature in old-school Halo 3. I loved being able to vote for playing on my favorite maps, and I'm sure it would instantly give Bungie a ton of free insight on which maps people like playing on and which maps people hate playing on. And we use that insight to hopefully influence some of the new maps coming in that eventual PvP map pack. Booyah. And on that note, we've come full circle on maps. You love to see it. All right, let's move on and talk about comp. The amount of comp that I play in a given season is directly tied to whatever the featured comp weapon is that season, And that is it. When Bungie introduced Rose and I found out how good it was on paper and how fun it was to use, I played a lot of comp. I love using hand cannons in PvP, daring today aren't we.jpg, so yeah, I played a lot to try and get a god roll Rose. Next, we had the Mercurial Overreach Sniper, which I originally didn't grind out because it had that weird issue where it had a comically tiny red dot in the scope. But after they patched that, I got a few. I didn't grind it too much because, I don't know, I got a lot of really good snipers I enjoy already, and I definitely shotgun more than I snipe. I'll say one thing for sure though, Bungie definitely has their work cut out for them at this point in the make PvP loot that incentivizes people to play department at this stage in D2. For the most part, new loot in comp, trials, or banner either falls into the category of goddamn that looks super hot, in which case people will grind until they get what they want and then pack it in, or they'll look at it, not be interested, and not touch it at all. Using trials as an example, when we were able to look at the API and look at the weapon stats of the Adept Immortal even before it dropped into the game, the vast majority of players knew it would be super hot fire, and the player numbers on trials that weekend went big. Then when you get something like the Glaive or the pre-lightweight frame buff Whisper the Worm, people go, you know what, I'm good, and nobody plays. So one could argue that the solution to get more people to play more consistently would be to just always make sure that the loot is hitting just right. Again, the problem with that is basically Bungie now has to carefully ride the power creep train and make better and better rewards, or everyone's just going to go play Baldur's Gate and try to bang Karlach for the 9th time. I've said this a million times, but it bears repeating. Something Bungie is leaning a little bit into and should do way more is promote purely superficial cosmetic rewards. Those emblems that you can get by hitting max rank in comp, that is a great idea. More of that, please. As a former Call of Duty goblin, let me tell you, the amount of stupid things I've done in-game to just get a great-looking emblem that I can show off and wear with dumb pride, uncountable. I don't know how much money it takes for Bungie to make and ship an emblem, but in the event that it hopefully doesn't cost a ton, why not go crazy? Different emblems for winning X number of games in comp on Warlock, Hunter, and Titan. Collect all 3. Different emblem for getting X kills in comp with the sniper and give it a sick scope design on the emblem or something. Or another emblem for getting X kills with a shotgun and the art is all pellet spreaded or some dumb bullshit like that. You played comp with someone who was a lower rank than you for X number of games in a row. Whoa, you get an all black Sherpa shader that'll make any day one hunter come in their pants next time they see you roll into the tower wearing it. More things like that. More superficial stuff that encourages people to play comp for reasons other than loot. Still include good loot if you can, of course. But that at least helps avoid situations like the Not Forgotten, where Bungie makes rewarding in-game loot that is too good and it comes in and crushes the sandbox in a rich get richer type situation. But yeah, players will do anything for emblems and shaders and outfits. You think I do solo flawless dungeons because they're fun? Hell no, I want that stupid emblem to show off. Same thing with bumping up my Guardian rank number each season. Getting Artifice Armor or Ascendant Alloy from comp would also be awesome, but if Bungie wants to keep comp the official, superficial, reward-focused game mode pointed only at the diehard PvP lovers, I guess I would understand. I'm sure some Bungie execs are scared of a situation where some average guy who doesn't play a ton of PvP boots up D2, sees you can get Ascendant Alloy from playing comp, goes, oh I'll try and get some, then uninstalls and has a quick cry sesh in the shower because he got mollywopped by 3 Antaeus Ward Titans for half an hour. Let's talk about Iron Banner. I'm not really sure what the identity of Iron Banner these days is supposed to be. Back in the day, Trials was the definitive endgame tryhard PvP mode, and Iron Banner was more of a loot grab. Now, Comp is the definitive endgame tryhard PvP mode in my opinion, and Trials is more of a loot grab. Iron Banner still gets some interesting loot every now and then, which is good. Again, I only want to speak for me, but when Iron Banner comes around, I usually just kind of react with, got it. Okay, so no Trials this weekend. I'm gonna go get ripped and play Dead by Daylight instead. banner lately, to me, feels like it's starting to wade into silly game type waters. It hasn't gone full-blown Mario Party like Team Scorched or anything like that, but it doesn't feel like the battle-hardened tests of might that Lord Saladin probably had in mind. The Fortress game type, in particular, feels so goofy to me. If you're one of the people who genuinely enjoy it, I'm happy for you, but I don't at all. The first few minutes it plays alright, but the play almost 100% of the time is for players to pick either Well of Radiance or Ward of Dawn with tier 10 intellect and pop super right on the zone. It feels really bad to be smoking the other team completely in terms of both kills and territory control, and then they drop one tier 5 super on the zone, and now they're in the lead. And yeah, you can counter that strategy by doing it yourself, but better, but I really get tired of feeling like I almost have to pick either Radiant Well or Bubble just so I can out-well or out-bubble the other team. And the post-game scoreboard. I know we've already covered this extensively in other videos. What the f*** am I looking at right now with this? Turrets killed, no KD, no KDA, really nothing of importance at all. And look, I get it. Some people shame other players' performance in the post-game lobby, and those people are assholes. I just want to have a general idea of how well I did number-wise. Maybe know if I have to lean forward in the gaming chair a little bit more next game, or know how well this loadout is working on paper in terms of lethality. Do I need to change it up a wee bit? What real person ever honestly cares about how many turrets they destroyed in a game of Fortress? But Fallout, if we show KDA in an objective game mode, people won't play the objective. People don't play the objective anyway. What the hell Iron Banner are you playing? Give us a good post-game screen already, no matter what the game type is. Thank you. On the subject of game modes, I feel like we could use some more core ones, by the way. As mentioned with Iron Banner, game modes can almost completely change the feel of the game. Playing Control feels way different than playing Rift, for example. The right game types can, to a degree, breathe new life into the game. I know this is something Bungie is working on with their Crucible Lab shenanigans, and I hope it's something they keep working on in the future. I'll admit I haven't really been great at trying out those new game types, mainly because I tried a while back and almost no one was in there experimenting in labs. The player numbers were really bad. I feel like we might need some extra incentive there to really get those playtest numbers up a wee bit. Give folks a playtest emblem or a shader if they play X games in labs for a new game mode. That'll get people in there, I'm sure. Moving on, let's talk about airborne effectiveness, better known as AE. This one is actually more tricky than a lot of people might realize, as some form of AE has literally always been in the game going back to D1. It's just never been a visible weapon stat until recently. Bungie didn't just create AE within the past year, which is a thing I've heard people say. Again, it's always been a thing. We just have the ability to see the weapon stat now and potentially build towards making that number go up. By the way, this is not a defense of the current AE system or me saying anything along the lines of, leave AE alone, it's all fine the way it is, because I'll admit, when I'm in the air and I throw out a shot that feels like it should hit and it just whiffs because I haven't built into the system, yeah, that feels bad. But again, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, AE has literally always been in Destiny since D1. So when players say, quote, remove AE, end quote, that person could be asking for one of two different things. One, asking to go back to how things were before the AE stat was made visible on weapons, which I can attempt to sum up in just a minute. Or two, asking for every weapon in the game to have identical performance in the air as it does on the ground. Again, some players think that option 2 was what we had before the recent introduction of the AE weapon stat. And again, no, we've technically never had option 2 in the game before, ever. I'd definitely be interested in seeing what option 2 would look like in action, but yeah, that's never been a thing before in all of Destiny, and could be a more drastic change than some people realize. I wonder if maybe we could have a Crucible Labs experiencing that. Could be fun, but I don't know if you can change things under the hood that drastically for just one PvP game type. If you can though, that would be a wild playtest. I would definitely be down with that. I'd also totally be down for option 1, by the way, aka just going back to how things were before the AE stat was made visible on weapons, just so we can be done with this discussion in the community forever. But that would mean that certain weapon mods like Icarus would go back to being the unquestionable goated pick for a lot of weapons, which I'm sure a lot of people would probably be fine with. Bungie could do some tweaking to the aim assist penalties when we're in the air, so it feels much closer to the way things were in the before time, or Bungie could also give us much more ways of building into the system that we have now, which does not feel like a lot. Or both. At the end of the day, the majority of PvP players I talk to still aren't happy with how weapons behave in the air, myself included, in the current system. So take that feedback as you will, Bungie. Let's talk about trials, including trials matchmaking, which is a conversation I truly hate having as a content creator. Boys, take note, there are 3 topics you should never have at a dinner party: religion, politics, and matchmaking. Over time, trials has kind of transformed. Back when it was initially created in D1, it was the ultimate endgame PvP activity where sweaty players congregated to see who was the best of the best. Nowadays, that has become comp, and trials has since evolved into more of a quasi-sweaty loot grab. And that's fine, honestly. It's just been sort of a mental readjustment for me when considering giving feedback for the game type in general. One piece of feedback I've seen popular among trial Sherpas in particular is for Bungie to reconsider allowing fire teams of 2 to queue into trials. First, I'm going to explain why that piece of feedback is popping up a lot, and then I'll give my official feelings on that and trials matchmaking in general. Go ahead and get your snarky rebuttal pre-typed for the comment section. Some people don't want duos to be able to queue into trials because it further spreads out the number of matchmade pools, which there are kind of a lot of already for trials, and it functions as kind of a quasi-queue dodge. What I mean by that is if you go into trials as a fire team of 3, there's an incredibly high chance, almost a guarantee, that you're only going to match another fire team of 3. Most fire teams of 3 rolling into trials these days are pretty stacked, so some people are intentionally rolling in as a fire team of 2, even though they have more friends who would happily play trials, to purposefully avoid all 3 stacked teams in trials. For dedicated teams of 3, this leads to a lot of fighting the exact same teams over and over, and even though I haven't been a trial Sherpa in a minute, I can only imagine that if you're trying to help someone go flawless who's never gone before, it would be significantly harder these days because, again, there's a 99.99999% chance that you're going to end up going against a powerhouse 3-stack. My thoughts. While I do miss the days where you needed a fire team of 3 to even step into trials in the first place, because again, trials used to be the definitive endgame PvP activity, I can only imagine that Bungie opening the doors to single and duo queuing in the first place has probably drastically increased the trials player population overall. And on that note, no matter what you do to trials matchmaking, either change it back to trios only or leave it how it is now, a portion of the player base is going to be not happy about it. If you change trials to what it was back in the day, aka you can only queue up if you have a fire team of 3, solo players and duo players are not going to be happy. If you keep trials matchmaking to what it's become now, old school 3-stack teams are going to have a much smaller pool of opponents and wind up fighting the same teams over and over, and it potentially clashes with the original concept of what trials was created to be. AKA, it used to be only the hardest of the hard should ever enter here, and only the toughest teams will succeed. And now it's lololol, queue as a fire team of 2 to avoid the sweats, lamau, get wrecked, try hard players. Again, no matter what you do, a portion of the player base is going to not be happy with the decision. Lately, I've been taking a very Drewski approach to certain things in PvP, which is to say finding the option with the best silver lining, which often is whatever will get more people playing the game in the first place. In the case of trials, I think the option that will ultimately get more people playing the game type is continuing to allow solo and duo queue players to jump in. I know, not the original vision of the game type that Osiris and Saint 14 foresaw, but better, higher player numbers overall IMO is the best possible silver lining. If you disagree, that's fine, it's just one man's opinion. If Bungie wants to lean into Trials' new role of being more of a loot-focused weekend PvP extravaganza, we could also crank up the rewards over there as well. Saw just last week that match wins in Trials now have a high chance to drop a non-adept Trials weapon. Nice, more things like that, please. I've always found it kinda odd that there's literally no way for PvP players to get Artifice armor by playing PvP. Maybe add some kind of way to get Artifice armor through Trials, or just add more interesting cosmetic rewards so people have more of a reason to go in other than just if the featured adept weapon is good that weekend. Let's move on to Sandbox Balancing, and maybe more specifically, exotic tuning. We've got good and we've got bad to go over. First, the good. I like how we're getting updates to the sandbox more frequently now than we were way back when. Nowadays, we get a balance pass at the beginning of the season and then usually around the middle of the season. More frequent tuning means more opportunities for balance, so go ahead and keep doing that, Bungie. Now, the bad. Even with these twice per season updates, we've had outliers kinda slip through the cracks and evade being tweaked time and time again. For example, Antaeus wards have been a top no-thought pick for many 1% PvP players playing Titans for a while now, as they're incredibly strong in the mid to close range SMG meta that we've had going on for a few seasons. There is counterplay, of course. It's not a guaranteed win if you put them on or anything like that, but it genuinely feels bad to lose to someone getting extra protection and extending the time it takes for them to be killed by just hitting W and control. I could definitely name more problem child exotics than just that one, but you get what I'm putting down. Routine sandbox tuning will matter more when outliers stop getting passed over, and again, that doesn't always seem to happen. Let's talk about a big elephant in the room in the form of stompies. Bungie could probably get a lot of easy brownie points by just undoing the nerfs and changes they have given to stompies. Would that result in an explosion of stompy usage across the top level of PvP hunter players? Yeah, probably. But would it also likely result in decreased usage in other exotics that encourage annoying ability spam? Yeah, probably. And given the choice between those two sides of the fence, I'd much prefer the former. Dealing with bouncy hunters IMO is far better than dealing with other forms of ability spam, and unlike Antaeus wards, wearing stompies doesn't make you tankier or occasionally straight up kill the person shooting you. Just let the jumpy class jump already, we'll be fine. Moving on. Let's talk about quickplay and skill-based matchmaking. This is another thing I hate talking about because, like before, 99% of the time, it just immediately turns into an argument. Like before, there's ups and downs to both options. Here is a hypothetical scenario that highlights the downside of 100% connection-based matchmaking in quickplay. Let's say you have a relatively new D2 player who hears the game is really fun and checks it out. He's played a few strikes and decides, oh boy, let's hop into Crucible and see what all the hype is about. But uh-oh, what do we have here? It's full-time PvP streamer and part-time male model ZK Mushroom. I wonder how this is gonna play out. Bam, 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 bam. Bam, oh god, the pain. Why is this happening to me? New player Nick gets folded harder than origami and uninstalls, never to return, and tells all his friends that the game is garbage. Here's a hypothetical scenario that highlights the downside of 100% skill-based matchmaking in quick play. Frequent good PvP player gets a new weapon or puts together a new build that they want to try out. They don't want to try it out in comp because it's only an experimental loadout that might not work out, and they don't want to lose rank that they've grinded so hard to get. They decide to queue into Control, Quick Play, a low-stakes place perfect for experimentation. But because it is 100% skill-based matchmaking, the queue takes forever to find a match, and when they do get one, the connection is absolute dog shit, with players teleporting around the map. Again, both scenarios have downsides. I think I'd like to see more of a focus on connection-based matchmaking in quick play. Let me finish with some elements of skill-based matchmaking at the very bottom in order to make sure that newer players and other super low-skill players don't get folded like a lawn chair the second they walk into PvP. If you're currently a less frequent PvP player, currently in the middle of writing a comment calling me an elitist, calling me a shrimp uncle or whatever, I'd like to remind you that I recommended only minutes ago that we should probably keep duo and solo queuing in trials, even though it meant tougher matches for 3 stacks and players at the top. That right there is what we in the business like to call a compromise. I think casual modes, i.e. control, should have more of a focus on connection-based, and non-casual modes, i.e. comp, should have more of a focus on rank. To repeat what I said earlier though, with trials, if changing the matchmaking to focus more on connection in casual-focused PvP modes results in players leaving D2 in droves and the player numbers completely tanking, then yeah, let's pump the brakes on that strategy and think about changing things up. At the end of the day, I just want people to play the game and the player-based numbers to be strong so we can build a bigger community and have our game get more focus and support from Bungie as opposed to dying in a ditch on the side of the road. There you go. That's all my thoughts and feedback on PvP at the moment. Feel free to weigh in with your own thoughts down in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on stream.